Hello?
Hello, good evening.
Hi. I thought I'd answered and I was there going, hello, hello, can you hear me? But obviously it hadn't gone through. I turned the volume up, thinking, oh, the volume must be low. And then I just thought, oh, I haven't accepted the call. So then I pressed accept. And then you saying hello there was just suddenly really loud. So I was like, okay, got to turn that volume back down again.
Okay,
Yeah, but it's all sorted now.
very good. I have adjusted the volume, so hopefully now it should be more level.
Right. Yes. Because I do notice that for a lot of, I mean, since the start, I've always been louder. It's always sounded like I've sort of like hit the cap before it starts like crackling, and you just sound like normal. But for the last one, I noticed there were times where your audio was really low,
hmm
so the line's more comparable.
yeah, I'm even adjusting it now as you speak. So for future reference, you're on minus 6.1 decibels. I'm on zero. So
Right?
I'm
Okay.
looking at the lines. We're reaching the same kind of level. Hopefully, it's all going to work. I am not very professional. I know nothing about sound except for I know how to make it using my body.
Yeah.
That sounded very strange. Apologies.
Yeah.
As
Well,
in,
that's how I.
I know how to speak. I'm not particularly knowledgeable about recording and so on.
Yeah. Well, that's how I made all the. Well, not exclusively, but that is like the groundwork of how I made the sound effects for the Level Up Land games. Just make like a noise and then run it through some sort of editing.
Yeah. So we're getting in the references really quick there.
Yeah, which
We're
I
make
noticed.
we're making up for last time.
Yeah, I noticed like as soon as like last time I finished, I was like, "Oh, we didn't talk about Level Up of Final Fantasy 8. I can't believe it."
Yeah. Well, what's your favorite sound effect in Final Fantasy 8?
A sound effect.
I'm not talking about
And
track. I'm talking about kind of sound
yeah.
effect. You know, when you use a spell or something.
Oh, that is
I really like
that's.
the draw sound effect. So
You know,
when you
I
come
was
across a draw
thinking.
point and you click on it and then you click it again to extract and it's just that sound is etched into my mind. I love it.
Right. See, I was thinking of like the draw, like from an enemy.
That too, but not so much as the
Yeah.
drawing from in the field. All right, now that we've got the references out of the way, what would you like to
Right.
talk about today?
Well, the topic was gaming away from home,
hmm
but before we get to that, um, something we mentioned last time, we talked about one of the games at the arcade club that
hmm
we were confused about,
Oh
and
yes, yes.
and I
I saw
found
your post.
I found out how it worked.
Okay, go on.
So, the game's called Quick and Crash. It's not a screen. It is actual targets.
hmm
Now, the way that the cup works is that the cup is always there, but there's like a little black sheet covering it up so you don't see it.
hmm
And then that like drops down when it appears. And when you shoot it, the black screen quickly like covers it up again. And in front of it, there's like a little compartment with little like shards in, and it just like
hmm
shoots them out.
Pretty
So
cool.
yeah, it is. It is
That's nice.
pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just trying to like remember just then. I was trying to think like, oh, how many sound effects can I remember from Final Fantasy 8? And I was thinking, well, I can remember like regen, and I'm thinking like Blizzard where it like
hmm It's like a
makes a
thump.
big. Yeah, it's weird. Like other ice spells in games, there's usually like a crash or like a spark or something.
hmm
That's like a little crash thing.
That's actually a weird. Blizzard in Final Fantasy VIII is a weird spell because it's not really the temperature that's doing you any damage. It's just being
Yeah.
hit by an object, like blunt impact. That's what does the damage.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Blizzara and Blizzaga uh, are all kind of they freeze the enemy in place.
yeah.
Go on, and what's your favorite spell in Final Fantasy VIII before we get onto the topic?
My favorite spell.
Yeah.
Um, I think, you know, if we're talking about like, oh, I think it would probably have to be something like Meltdown or Aura. Actually, probably
hmm Yeah.
Aura, because it's just like, you know, limit breaks are good. It means you do more of them.
hmm Yeah. I'm not to be honest. I know that the
Yeah.
limit breaks are the way to play Final Fantasy VIII, but I'm not particularly happy about that.
Yeah.
I like them, but I think they're too good. I don't know. My
Yeah.
favorite spell would probably be Demi. That got me out of a pickle many times. So
Right.
when I was younger and I didn't really know how to play the game, somehow we'd had loads of demis in our game save, and we're using them not on a boss because that doesn't work, but for example, when trying to get Ton, did they work on Tonberry? I think they work on Tonberry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah, so that was the only way we could possibly have got Tonberry by using demis.
Yeah.
Anyway, right.
Yes. Yeah. Uh, so first of all, I think I should actually. Okay, I've got a few thoughts about like the concept of gaming away from home, which was the topic.
Hmm.
Should I start with that?
Yeah, go for it.
Right, okay. Because there's also like a particular story that I was thinking about that really got me think. That was like, say if this was one of those times where I'd sort of like introduce the topic to you by telling you a story first, that would be the story that I was going to use. But I'll get to that after I've gone through these few questions. So first question is, how do you feel like just about playing games away from home in general?
In general, I don't really do it. I don't really like it.
Right, yeah. Because what I've found over time is that I sort of don't feel comfortable with it as much these days as I used to.
Hmm.
Like I remember I'd take like my Game Boy places and stuff, but eventually it got to a point where, I'd have like a Vita or whatever, and it would just be a case of I'll bring it with me, and then I just think to myself, I can't be bothered. I'm not in my relaxed environment,
Hmm.
and I feel like that's become more of a thing. Like I need to be in my own relaxed environment, whereas before, um, I could I could just like play games anywhere, and it wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah. I think for me there's a few things there are a few things to consider. I think the first and foremost it's this relaxed environment that I'm after. For me to have fun playing a game, I kind of need to be in the right mindset for it, especially these days. Um and secondly, I don't know, not as much now. Now I've kind of embraced my inner nerd, but bef for a long time I felt there's a stigma attached to video games. And so if
Yeah,
I wanted to play somewhere that wasn't in my own home, then I would feel I'm being, judged by other. Let's say I'm on a train. I feel I'm being judged by passengers. So say I've got a video game on my phone. I don't know. I've got Pokemon Yellow running on an emulator on my phone, and I'm having a whale of a time because it's Pokemon Yellow or Blue or Red or whatever. Um, if I spend the exact same time staring at my phone, but it's like some stupid thing on Netflix, then there's less of a stigma, staring at your phone, looking at something on Netflix as opposed to playing a video game. Those were my feelings before. Nowadays, I don't think I feel that bad about it. I could do it wherever I want, but I think it's like you said, I need this calm, relaxed environment.
yeah. Especially if it's something like something big like an RPG or whatever, I think
Hmm.
I think there's a notable exception, like with the arcade club, for example, where if it's just like that is the environment and it doesn't matter what happens, just have at it.
Hmm.
I think that's a sort of different situation. But yeah, I sort of find that generally speaking, is like I don't want to do it. Like it used to be when I was younger, I'd sometimes like play games in my brother's room, even though like I could play in my room. Like he'd have a PS1, I'd have a PS1, but I just go into his room anyway. And looking back, that feels really weird.
Hmm.
It's like I can't relate to that now, but that was how it was.
Well, just recently, when I was in England, my I bought my brother the Final Fantasy VII remake on Steam for PC, and he installed it, but he didn't play it. He wanted to wait for me.
Yeah,
And I think the reason he wanted to wait for me wasn't necessarily that it was wasn't necessarily that he wanted to share the experience with me. More, I don't think he was too keen on playing it because he was in the middle of World of Warcraft, which is a whole story in and of itself. But anyway, so he waited for me to come and visit. So that's when we played it. So I went up to his room. So we were relaxing. It was a fairly comfortable setting. We had a big TV. We had uh, the game running. It should have been nostalgic. It should have been fun. Um, but while it was completely okay, what am I trying to say here? I started that sentence with the wrong grammatical tone, I think. The point is, we had the game set up, we played, but it didn't have the same kind of feeling I felt that it had when we were kids, for example, starting a new game. I would prefer, for example, I know it sounds weird, but I would prefer him stream it on Steam. It's not on Steam. Him stream it on Discord, and I just watch his screen while we're both on headphones. I'm at my desk here in Poland. He's at his desk in England. That would have felt more comfortable, I think. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a bit strange.
yeah, I can totally understand that. So another thing I was thinking about, and this is something that's just not crossed my mind recently, but it's crossed my mind before. Um, and I was thinking about, like going to other people's houses, like friends' houses, and sometimes family. I suppose it depends on whether anyone in your family plays games, but um, so say you go to like someone else's house and they've got their own games, they've got their own like TV set up, and they've got their own
Hmm.
consoles, and everything's different to you in some shape or form. Did you ever find that even though you wouldn't like say, I mean, there might be some jealousy on your part. I mean, I've had that where I've had a friend who got a PS1 before me, and I was jealous. But even outside of that, do you ever have it where just the fact that it's different has some sense of novelty to it, where you feel like you can enjoy it in a different way? Does that make sense?
Oh, I can tell you something. Yes, firstly, yes, that doesn't make sense. And secondly, I just think going back to my childhood, even the layout of a friend's house made going over there exotic.
Oh,
So
oh,
in our
I,
house, so when I was a kid, we had our front door that led through to a corridor, and all the rooms were off that corridor because it used to be a bungalow, but my parents built the second floor, the first floor above
is
it.
this? Hold on, just thought. Is this the story about? Was it about the fridge in the corner?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, but
yeah.
we had well, okay, it's not exactly that, but it's kind of related to that. And our set of stairs was all the way around the back of the house on the extension. So first my parents built an extension and they did at the same time. They built an extension to the back of the house and also the first floor. And the stairs were all the way around the back. And this is really unusual for houses, for two-story houses in the UK. Usually the stairs are right at the front by the corridor. So as soon as you enter through the front door, you have the corridor and you have stairs right next to each other, so you can go upstairs. I don't know what it was like in your house, but that's
My house is very strange.
okay. In any case, I just found being in this environment, which is completely alien to what I'm used to where I spend most of my time, made anything more fun. That made even if we were to sit and watch a film, oftentimes we had a nicer TV. Uh, I think my dad was the kind of person that he wouldn't want to spend a lot of money, but if he had to buy something, he would buy something properly. He'd just go and get a really good thing, whatever that thing was supposed to be. And so we had a very nice TV, a big old CRT, a Sony CRT. And so watching films was better at our house objectively because we had a nicer TV and we had um I think we had surround sound and things like that. But going to somebody else's house and sitting on their sofa because their sofa is positioned in a different way from ours, it made it more exciting. And the same is true with video games, I think. There were at times where my friends simply had better equipment than I had, so they were able to play PC. This is much later. They were able to play PC games that my PC couldn't play, or they had a PlayStation 2 with games that we didn't have. But in general, just simply being in a different environment when I was a kid was a bonus.
Yeah, and I agree, and I felt that as well. And it seems that is in total contradiction to what we've said previously about, we need to be like in our own familiar, relaxed environment
Yeah.
for these sorts of things. But yeah, like I can remember as a kid, I once went to my friend Matthew's house, who was my friend in primary school. I've mentioned him a few times. Um, I went to his house, and he had a Master System. I had a Mega Drive, but he had a Master System, which was like the previous generation, and he had Sonic the Hedgehog on the Master System, which I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a different game than the Sonic the Hedgehog and the Mega Drive, which is the one, the famous one that everyone knows.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember going there and seeing it because I didn't go to his house very often. It was very rare I went to his house, but it's like his room, the floor. I think it was like a wooden floor, and his TV was quite high up on like this chest of drawers. So it was quite at an awkward angle. And the thing with the Master System, I've never known any other console to do this, um, thankfully. But it had this weird thing where the pause button was on the console itself
Uh-huh.
rather than on the controller. So you actually
That's
had to
weird.
like it is weird. So you had to, because it was on such like a high shelf, you had to like get up and press it on the console to pause it. And at the time, I can look back and I'm thinking, right, well, the setup that I had was definitely superior to that. But just because it was new to me, like this Sonic game. I wanted to be able to play it. So I remember asking for Christmas a Master System converter from a Mega Drive. There's this thing you plug on top of your Mega Drive,
Hmm.
and you can play Master System games. And I remember my uncle saying to me, like, well, what would you want the older one for when you got the newer one? And to me, it was just like it's a different thing. It's
Hmm.
more games. That's all I was thinking at the time. And another, this is a very strange, a very strange memory. Um, I don't know how old I would have been at the time, but I would have been young, maybe 5 or 6, I don't know. But I went to I went to my nana's house, and she lived. It was quite like a rough estate, but she lived like on this rough estate, and her friend lived just like further down the road, and sometimes we'd go over there just because of it. My nana just wants to visit her friend, and she had a son who, I mean, I don't know what he had. But I remember we went to, well, it would have just been me at the time. I went to his room. I think he's like 1 or 2 years older than me. But I went to his room because he was showing me like the games he had. I remember he had Sonic 2, and he had another game which was like it was like a space shooter game, which in my mind, I think he said it was Sonic 3 or whatever, but obviously it wasn't Sonic 3.
Hmm.
But I just remember he had this big TV, or it seemed big at the time, and it was green. Not like like the border of the TV, like the actual like image. It was like black and white, but it was just like
Uh-huh.
green.
Yeah. So I think
And I,
that would have been like an old computer monitor that
yeah,
displayed. Yeah.
it's yeah, and I just remember that, and it's sort of like, I mean, at this point, I'd already played Sonic 2, so I was familiar with it. But I remember we played some two players on Sonic 2, and it was just I just remember it being like this screen that's green, and even though like technically that's worse, it was like this is good somehow.
Oh, I remember this is when I was at university. I played the group of people at my halls of residence whom I played football with, kind of in real life. We also had FIFA, so we played football on the computer on the video game as well, or video game. in a video game as well. And so in our block, we played on my computer. So I had a desktop PC. It was actually my brother's one that I borrowed because he wasn't using it anymore. And I had FIFA on there, and they had a PlayStation, I think, which was connected to a TV, whereas I had FIFA connected to a monitor. Now, I don't know how much experience you have. You might not with PC games versus console games. But when you plug in, firstly, the game runs a lot faster. It runs at a higher frame rate on the PC. So on PS3, I think it ran at 30 frames per second, whereas on the PC it ran at 60, and that was my monitor speed. So the game just felt much more fluid. But also because they played on a TV, there was input lag. So when you do something on your controller, it took longer for that action to be displayed on the TV than it did on my computer monitor. And for them, when they came over to our block, it was they didn't feel much of a difference because they were getting, they were used to worse equipment. So when they played on better equipment, they did fairly well. Whereas for me and my friends in the friends who lived in our block who were used to my computer monitor, to be honest, don't actually think they noticed. To be fair, it might just been me. Um, the step down to the TV screen as opposed to work playing on the monitor was a real downgrade, and I hated playing in their part of the halls of residence were in their block. Anyway, that was just a memory.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that when they went and played on the monitor, they would have done worse because they would have already like mentally accounted for the input lag.
Yeah, that's something that I can get into with a different game, but
All right.
that's online lag. But no, they played very well on my equipment, but whenever we went over there, I just really struggled. So I would do an action. I would perform like a quick reaction and perform an action in the game, and it just wouldn't be reflected on screen, and I just really struggled. Um, Overcompensating, there's something that we used to do on overcompensating for lag, essentially, was something we used to do on Delta Force. Because I think the game either had bad net code, so the connection online was quite bad, or it was just simply the times that people were using, dial-up internet and so on. And it meant that if you wanted to shoot somebody, you would aim like half a meter ahead of where you thought they were going to be. But it was
Yeah,
actually fairly natural. You got used to it, and it wasn't so bad. Obviously, if they were standing still, you would shoot at them as opposed to where you expect them to be.
yeah. I suppose there's plenty of games that are naturally built like that. I mean, maybe not like first-person shooters or anything, but where you got to like time it up right. I actually thought so how like, okay, so you're talking about like that monitor with different like input lag and all that.
Hmm.
How about like on the topic of screen size? Because when I started, and right up until I'd say around my mid-teens, I used like a pretty small TV. I went through a few of them, but I had a pretty small TV. In fact, at a couple of points, I used a tiny black and white screen. I
Hmm.
remember one time on my Mega Drive, um, I think my TV broke, so I got like this quick fix, this little portable black and white TV, and I just used that. I remember there was one time, um, around 2000, I think. I think this was when because I got Final Fantasy VIII for my birthday in 2000 and Pokemon Yellow at that same time. I remember it was around that time that my brother had like a small black and white TV in his room, and I remember playing Rayman and Final Fantasy VIII on that tiny, like just like a tiny black and white screen,
Hmm.
which seems weird to think about now. But there was one friend's house where I went to, and he had Now, this is the friend that I've mentioned. I mentioned earlier today that there was someone who I was jealous of because he got a PS1 before I
Hmm.
did. Previous to that, it was a case of, Mega Drive games like, oh, I've got this Mega Drive game or whatever. And then one day he said, oh, yeah, I got a PS1 for Christmas. And I was like, oh, PS1. Um, and so his sort of gaming setup, which in in retrospect, it wouldn't have properly worked out because there would have probably been like much more like harsh limitations on him. But he used the downstairs like main TV. It wasn't like
Hmm.
like a little TV in his room or whatever. It was like the main one downstairs. So I'm thinking, right, okay. Um, Obviously that means it was going to be taken up that it's going to be limited to when you can use it. But I remember at the time it was just this the thought of this big TV and the PS1. He had like we're playing Tekken 2 and Pandemonium, and I was to me it was like a big deal. So just wondering if you had that experience with like different size TVs, like you see other people with like bigger TVs, and it's like at the time
Well,
like a really big
I
experience.
get what you mean with I get what you mean with the balance between having a nice TV and being able to play whenever you want.
Yeah,
That was quite big. So we like I said before, we had quite a big TV. I don't know if it was, I think it might have been 32 inches or 36 inches. So it was quite a big TV, but it was a CRT, and so it was absolutely massive. It took up a lot of space. And I remember that's the TV I played the PlayStation 3 on to begin with. But our other option was a small Sony CRT, which I don't know, at a guess would have been maybe 20 inches or something like that. And this was in the guest room to begin with. And then later when we moved house, it was in my room. And it was, I think, something that I was quite happy to uh to give up screen quality for being able to play whenever I wanted. But when I went to somebody else's house, I don't think I was ever particularly impressed by what they had. I don't know. I think we were quite lucky that we had the TV screen that we had. Later on, with computer monitors, though, um, if somebody had a really fancy, a really big computer monitor, and back then I think I only had my first computer. I had a um, 15-inch monitor, and I think my friend had a bigger one, like a 20. Anyway, I don't think I was ever quite so jealous or
yeah,
intrigued or impressed by somebody else's screen.
yeah,
Actually, back then, I don't think it was important at all, to be honest. I think it was just the novelty of being able to play a video game. That was entertainment enough.
yeah.
And I mean, I was completely satisfied with the Game Boy Color's tiny screen. That
Oh
entertained me.
yeah, yeah. I remember like the Game Boy you could get. I remember on
Oh,
my
no.
Game Boy Pocket. Huh?
Sorry, I have one thing
Was
that
it?
I was completely jealous of.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. My brother got a Game Boy Advance SP, and that had a backlit color screen, and that was incredible. And
Yes,
my Game Boy Color, well, could get stuffed compared to that. Anyway, please continue.
yes. I was going to say that I think I think it's interesting that there were times where I just like very happily played on a tiny black and white screen, and there were other times where I saw like at the time. I mean, it wouldn't have been that big. I mean, maybe 20 inches at most, maybe even less than that. But what seemed at the time to be like a hold on, I mean, I might have the numbers wrong. I don't know, but it was just like a CRT like screen, and I just thinking to myself like, oh wow, this is amazing. But it was again, it wasn't like I suppose with you, it was mostly just like the novelty of seeing it. It wasn't something that I kept thinking like, oh, I need that because I was
Mhm.
happy with whatever screen I had at the time. But I was thinking like it's interesting to contrast that to how I have things now with my laptop because as you have seen, the way I have a monitor with my laptop and I have it oriented vertically. Um, so it's like I've got the two. like two screens, but the way that I do it is that with my vertical screen, I use the top half for videos, and then I use the bottom half for usually just like Facebook or just whatever, something like that. And
So
then my
when you're
laptop
not
screen,
working, when you're relaxing.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and then my main, like the screen on my laptop, I might have like a game or whatever. I don't know. I mean, apart from Age of Empires, I play that on my vertical screen. I just do like the whole screen there. But the fact that I'm okay with having, it's like I've got this monitor. I mean, quite awkward with the space that I've got. I could have it like horizontal and then just like have a video on full screen on that, and that would be fine. But it's like I'm totally satisfied with just having it like this bit in the top, like a bit further above the screen. So it's like I've got these. So it's kind of like I've got two like rather small screens that I can like look around, and then just above that is like a video, and it's nice. It sort of brings me back in a way to the time when I did have that small screen, and because the screens that I've had for like my consoles, like I say, I started with just like a regular small screen, and then eventually I got the main CRT TV that we had downstairs for a while. Um, it was when you turned it off, the amount of static that came off that, it was immense. And then eventually it got like a screen bigger than that, and then I've got one bigger than that since then. And it's not like a case of I want to keep getting bigger and bigger screens. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I just find that interesting. Anyway, I should uh, I should actually talk about that story. That random story I was going to tell you that I said I was going to introduce the topic with.
Okay, go on.
Um, that I've ended up totally not. Yeah. So what made me think about this topic is that there was a friend's house I used to go to, and I used to take. Sometimes I'd take like a memory card or whatever, and I would play on the GameCube. And one game that he had was Mario Kart Double Dash, and so I was like, right, okay, I'll play that. So I started playing on Mario Kart Double Dash, and eventually I managed to complete it 100%. So do all the racetracks, like the Grand Prix and every cup on each of the different speeds, and get like first place in all of them, and whatever else there is, I don't remember. Basically, it's one of those games where you do all the stuff and the title screen changes. So I managed to get the title screen to change, and then it occurred to me, like down the line, it's like, oh, there's a game that I 100%ed, but I've never owned, and I've never played it in my own house. So I just thought that was
That's
a
very
bit unusual.
strange.
Yeah,
For me, 100%ing anything is extremely unlikely. I don't have that much patience, and yet to do it at somebody else's house, that's
yeah,
impressive.
like entirely as well. Yeah, it was a case of I don't know. It was just a case of like, oh, it's some sort of game to play whilst I'm there, other than like a portable thing. But I don't know. I suppose there's a novelty of it being a game I've not got. So I suppose another place, and I remember you mentioned your school once had a PS2 and you played Worms 3D there. Is that right?
Yeah, this is where I did my A levels. So
Yeah,
this would have been what year? 2010. 2010,
yeah.
2011. Yeah, that was
So
weird.
um, I suppose
I've
that
got,
sort of story.
yeah.
Hmm? I was going to say, I suppose that sort of story wouldn't fit into the typical sort of story for this, but I was thinking about like, what about like games at school?
What do you mean? Oh, like non-video games. So real games.
No, well,
Non-virtual games, I mean.
I suppose, well, you see, that is something that isn't what was on my mind, but I suppose you could go into that. But no, I was thinking, um, games.
Oh, I've got an idea.
I was think, okay, I was thinking about uh, either sort of random events to where like games came into it, or games that were into like that you were made to like play as part of like a class, like an educational sort of experience.
So first of all, I don't recall any kind of educational experience involving games. Any pre-planned educational experience. I think games can be very educational, but not at school. We never were encouraged to play video
Yeah,
games at school. I just remembered in 2002-ish and in 2005-ish, I actually spent a few months in a school in a village in the middle of nowhere in Poland. Okay, in the middle of nowhere isn't quite right. It's in it's in a fairly historic part that I don't know people I think know about in Poland. Anyway, but in this village, the school was very underfunded, let's say, compared to English schools. I mean, there was no there was no science lab, for example. There was no kind of kitchen where kids learn, cookery. There was a school
yeah,
kitchen where they prepared food, but there wasn't anything like that. And they had bought computers for 2002. This is memories from then. For 2002, for a school in the middle of nowhere, this was quite big in Poland that they had their own computers. And if I remember correctly, most of them were broken, and a lot of them had been stolen by the time I was at school there. It's shocking. It's really sad. But I remember the only experience that I have on those school computers was playing a game called Elastomania, which was like a 2D trial bike game. But the unique selling point of this 2D trial bike game was that the player and the motorbike are elastic. No, the player isn't elastic, just the motorbike. So if you can imagine you okay. Oh, this is difficult for me to explain. But in any case, you know how a motorbike or a bike works, that you sit on the seat part that has the motor, and then the motor has to be connected to two wheels, or the frame
right.
has to be connected to two wheels. Well, these connections to the two wheels can be extended practically any distance, depending on your inertia, depending on how quick you go. And the only kind of fail state is if your biker hits his head against the ground.
Right.
That's the only fail state. And your whole body can pass through the ground. It's not really an issue. The only thing, so for example, if imagine a very, very narrow ledge that goes on forever. If you drive to the end of the ledge and then you put your brake, you do kind of like a front flip to the point where your wheels are on the top of the ledge, but your body's beneath the ledge. And then you can continue riding like that, where you're upside down on the ledge, but somehow your bike goes through the physical ledge. That's the idea. So the point is, it's really wacky, and it was loads of fun, and it was on these school computers. And I remember we had someone had either unlocked or bought or pirated the full version, and the full version was on the school computers. And I think actually that might have been the very first time I came across level editors, because that had you could make your design your own levels on that game. In any case, further on in the future, we've got that game for our home PC. But sticking on the theme of trial bikes, moving back to the school I went to in England, so this is secondary school, so this would have been from 2004 onwards. Whenever we had like a computer class, we very often uh, we very often found it wouldn't take an hour to start a spreadsheet and to sort the data in descending numerical value. That wasn't particularly difficult. You could do that in 5 minutes. So for the rest of the
Yeah.
time, so the rest of the hour and 10 minutes or hour and 5 minutes that was remaining, we couldn't go on Miniclip because that had been blocked. We couldn't go on addictinggames.com because that had been blocked. We couldn't install our own games, apart from one game that we seemed to be able to run, which was, the death. Oh, jeez. Thank you, OneDrive. Look back at your memories. Sorry. That's really unprofessional again. But
Yep.
OneDrive seems to think, okay, this genuinely happened last month. It said, look back at your memories 2 years ago today, or something along those lines. And they showed me a picture of the car that I'd crashed and that car accident that I was in. If I was,
Yeah.
if that memory was very sensitive for me, that would that could have been disastrous for my psychological for my mental well-being, for my psychological state.
Yep.
Just,
That is a thing that can happen.
geez, Microsoft. Sorry about that.
Yeah. It's all
Anyway,
right.
I forgot what I was saying.
You managed to install one game
Oh yeah,
on these
the game
PCs?
was like desktop. Oh, what would it have been called? Okay, there's going to be a bit of clicking. I'm gonna go on my phone. I want to find out what it was. But it was like a desktop destroyer where you had like you could put worms on your desktop and they would start eating away at the pixels. Do you remember anything like that?
I don't think
Oh
so.
wow, it was amazing. And there was like a flamethrower, there was a gun, there was a hammer you can hit the
Ah,
screen.
yes. I don't think I'd ever like. I think I've seen it in some capacity, but I don't remember where or how. I don't think I've ever used it.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't remember what it was called, but it was something along those lines. You could use a chainsaw, machine gun. You could, oh, that's it. You could put termites on your screen. Yeah, so that was a game. That was a game that somehow we were able to run on the school computers because I think that was one that you had to. It was like an exe file. So maybe somebody had. Oh, somebody might have had it on their USB drive, and so they ran it.
Yeah.
But apparently the IT administrator, we didn't know this, but it makes sense that he saw all of our screens remotely, and so he must have known that we were pissing about. Pardon my language. He must have known that we were mucking about and playing. So another game that we played was Trial Bike something. And I just remember that it always started off with Monday, 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 and that was one of the only games that we could find that actually ran on the school computers that hadn't been blocked on the network.
When you said um about like the IT admin could possibly see all your screens as this was going on,
Yeah.
it just reminded me in secondary school. Um, my brother was a part of a game maker club, so like Game Maker, the software, where people people joined in and they made games and they posted the games that they made. This was like it was an early version of Game Maker, and they were all like kids, so obviously it was very very like bare basic. But me and my friend, um, who I called him Bridge because I called him by his surname, and so it was me and Bridge. We were in like sixth form, I think, at this point. I think we were in sixth form, or maybe like the year just before sixth form. And we got added as admins. Like my brother added us as admins, so we were sort of like we're doing this, and then one of the IT teachers, like the one who was known to be really strict, who like he'd always comment to people like telling them to tuck the shirts in and everything,
Oh yeah.
like all the time. He called us to his office and he was explaining like what's going on, how come this has happened. And so we basically, the thing is, it went down really well. We were explaining like, oh yeah, well we've been using Game Maker, and so we just thought it would be good for us, it would be good for them and whatever. And he sort of like he was sort of like won over to it. Like I think he was expecting us to like sort of like either cower or
Hmm.
sort of like feel guilty or whatever. But I think we did a good job, and I think he came over to it. But my brother had he had accidentally enrolled every student in the school
Oh
into the
wow.
game maker course on the internet thing.
Uh-huh.
So you go to members, and there was everyone. Yeah,
This
that was
is
quite funny.
this is a little bit off topic, but I'm sure I've told you this before. Did I ever tell you about the time where I crashed the computer or the computer network at school?
I don't think so.
No? All right, we were in one of the IT clusters, and it was geography, and we had to do a PowerPoint presentation on something, I don't know, on soil, let's say. And we were there for the entire double lesson. And okay, this is actually really bad because if whatever we couldn't finish, I think we was told as like a motivator to get as much done as possible. We was threatened that we would have to do it at home. So everyone wanted to get it done. And as usual, being the fantastic pupil that I was mucking about and not doing what I was supposed to do. And I remember I wanted to annoy one of my friends. And so I went on his computer while he wasn't looking. And I may or may not have created on Windows XP, created about two desktop worths of briefcases. So this is probably around 300 icons, let's say, of briefcases. And then I proceeded to Control A, so it's to select all of them. And I think I wanted to delete them, but I accidentally pressed Enter. And then this computer tried to open 300 briefcases which were saved on the network at the same time, and it crashed the entire computer system. Everyone's computers just died. And the teacher had no idea what was happening. And I I had some idea, but I didn't tell anyone. So yeah, that definitely happened. And
So that takes me back because I remember I know I've got like images of the briefcase icon. I knew it was a thing, but I don't actually know what it is.
oh, I have no idea either.
All right.
I think it may have. It definitely wasn't a zipped folder.
Yeah, I think it.
Hang on,
Yeah,
let's
when
have
I
a look.
try and think about it, I think of it like, is it like a zip folder, like that sort of thing?
Okay, let's have a look. Windows XP briefcase. What was the briefcase used for anyway? This is on How to Geek. Okay.
Yeah.
The briefcase was all about syncing files. First, you'd store the briefcase on a device that travels with you. For example, if you had a laptop, you could keep the briefcase anywhere on your laptop. If you had a desktop PC, you could keep it on a floppy disk. And then you drag important files you wanted to take with you into the briefcase. For example, if you had some documents or something, you just drag it into the briefcase on your laptop. And the briefcase, oh, so maybe the briefcase didn't actually have to be. No, you have to place it on the floppy disk anyway. So just like a folder that had an. It seems just to be a folder that had an icon of a briefcase. That's
Right.
really
Well,
strange.
very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So I was thinking about those. If I think about like playing games at school, I think when it comes to secondary school, there was sometimes like flash games where we would just like muck about and all that.
Hmm.
Like for example, the helicopter game. There's a helicopter,
Yes.
you just like click for it to go up and release
Yeah,
for it to
yeah.
go down. Yeah, just stuff like that. But I'm thinking like in primary school, because for me, like computer games, like the concept of computer games just made something instantly appealing. It was like if ever there was a selection of activities and one of those activities was a computer game, it would be like, I want that one. But no matter what. Um, so I suppose try to think of like the order that I should tell these stories. Actually, okay, I'll start with this one. So sometimes we would have they were called like play days, I think. So it would be like the last day of term. And what would happen is you'd bring a toy in and you just spend the day playing with whatever toys people brought in. And I remember it was in year three, so we would have been 7, 8, around that age. I don't know, about 7 or 8. Um, and a friend of mine, she brought a Game Boy, and she had Kirby's Dream Land, and I just remember pestering her all day. It's like, please, can I have a go? Please, can I have a go? She's like, no, no. I don't remember anything else at the time. I just remember pestering it. And I think I did eventually have a go. But yeah, it was just. And I also have a vague memory of like in year five playing on someone's Game Boy, just Super Mario Land. But yeah, I just have that memory of pestering my friend. And in year four, I think it was, one of those days, I remember someone, again, it's a weird context, but I remember someone brought in a PS1 and they were playing Bloody Raw, but I didn't. Did I get to play it? I don't think I did. Maybe a bit, but it was sort of like it was treated like a popular attraction rather than just like a niche thing that I wanted to do. It was
Mm.
treated as like a popular attraction, and I wasn't. Well, it's not just that I wasn't particularly popular at school, but I wasn't very vocal either. Like, I wouldn't, I wouldn't stand up for myself or anything. I'd just sort of like let people get on and do their thing. So for me, it was just sort of like, oh yeah, that seems cool. That seems nice.
Hmm. I remember we had in my secondary school we had a group of kids who brought their Nintendo DSs and their Game Boys to
Yeah.
school, and they played them at lunch. They played them at break and at lunch. They just met in one place and they sat together and played it. I don't know what games they played. I don't know. I always played sports or football or tennis at break and lunch, but I don't know. I don't know what kind of games they played. I bet they had a good time, but I think everyone else looked at
Yeah.
them as though they were absolutely nutcases, that they were, really weird and so on. But they did what they liked.
Yeah. Um, the other story about games in primary school, and I suppose this isn't, I suppose like sort of my question and my follow-up here isn't necessarily about anything to do with, gaming in school or anything like that, but more so just like a certain issue that I had with just something in games that I sort of was never able to properly get a grasp on. Um, and that is the idea of finding patterns where it's not made apparent that there is a pattern to be found. So I'm thinking, there was one time, it might have been around age 8 or 9, I'm guessing. We went into the library and we had this game. It's like pair off into groups, and we had to play this game. It was something like the magical adventure of Zoombinis or something like that. And the way that it worked is you had all these like little blue beans, and you had to sort of put pieces together, like give them like a nose and give them hair and legs and all that. And there was many different styles. So you could have like one with a spring for legs, or it could be just like normal legs, or a fan. And you could like different nose colors and different hairstyles like glasses and all that. You just make all like sort of different types. And the first level of that is you've got these two bridges, and you have for each Zoombini, you have to choose which bridge for them to cross. And on each of the mountains, on each of these bridges, there was this face. And sometimes when you brought a Zoombini across the bridge, uh, the face would sneeze, and your Zoombini would be thrown back to the start, meaning that the idea is that there's something about that Zoombini that that mountain is allergic to. So say you've got one with like it's got glasses, it's got a hat on, it's got a pink nose, and it's got a spring for legs. And say if this particular this particular face is allergic to springs, you bring it along, and it would sneeze, and so that Zoombini would get chucked back, but you wouldn't know why. It could be the nose, or it could be something else, and you're supposed to sort of like deduce what made it cross the bridge. But you see, I think other people were able to get like see through and get through this, because it wouldn't have occurred to me at the time that that is why the face is sneezing. In my mind, it's just, well, they're just sneezing. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I think you just described one of the weirdest games I've ever heard. And this was educational. I don't understand what
Yeah.
part is educational.
Well, I think the idea is it's meant to be
Like problem
it's
solving.
yeah, problem solving, like
Okay.
recognizing patterns,
Yeah.
deduction.
Yeah, your reaction was definitely weird. I can, I don't
My
know.
reaction
Your reaction that, there's a game mechanic and it's happening, and you just thought, well, that's a completely unrelated incident now. I just want to progress. Why can't I progress?
Yeah, it's like because there's nothing in the game to suggest to me that that was what the cause was. Like another game, do you know The Secret of Monkey Island? Are you familiar with that at all?
Rings a bell, but I can't picture it.
Point and click adventure game.
Okay.
Well, um, I managed to get like every time I played it, I managed to get so far. I really, you know what? It's a game I really should watch a let's play of because it's like I've got memories of it. But and I remember quite a bit going on, and I remember I needed Matthew to help me with quite a lot of it because there were quite a few things that I didn't really figure out. But I got stuck at this point where there was you had to beat the sword master at a sword fight. And what would happen is you'd go around this island challenging different people to a sword fight, and every so often they would like hurl an insult at you, and you'd have to say something back to them. And the way that it worked is that if you sort of give a witty comeback, something that related to what they said, you'd win the fight. But it didn't occur to me as a kid that saying things is going to make people lose at a sword fight.
Yeah.
So I was trying like, what if I just click the mouse over and over again? What if I, it didn't make like I could not make sense of it.
Yeah, I
But
can understand that a
it,
bit more.
yeah, it didn't. It's because the context was such that I didn't recognize that there was a pattern there to be seen in that particular thing because I didn't make that connection. And this is in stark contrast to, and again, another experience at school where similar sort of idea, but it was set up like this big challenge, very much related to the. I suppose you could say this is very much like the Zoom Beanies game, but there was one challenge that we had where like in and this was like the last I think it was yeah it would have been the last year of school because Matthew was the year above me and he'd left at this point, but we had like these little plastic eggs. They weren't like eggs, they were sort of like flat, if you know what I mean, like the shape of an egg, like a 2D
Okay.
shape of an egg, and they had like little things you could clip on like hair and a bow tie and trousers and shoes and all that. And the idea was that you had to make make it so that every single egg had a different composition. So not no two are exactly alike. And the other kids would try this and they'd put together like an egg and then they'd put another one and then they'd look at them and be like, oh no, but that one matches this one. What if we change the shoes on that? And they all struggled. And then when it came to my turn, and I did it. It was just a case of like I knew what I was doing straight up. It's like, right, how many different types of hair are there? Two. Okay, half of them are red, half of them are blonde, right? How many different types of bow ties are there? Again, like say if it's like two
Hmm.
different colors of bow ties, it's like right, half of the red get the blue bow tie, half of the red get the yellow bow tie, half of the blonde get the red bow tie, and I just did that, and I just did it, and it was just so easy, and everyone was like amazed that I did it so quickly, and it's just like I suppose that people would interpret that situation as being similar to the Zoom Beanie situation, but to me it was totally different.
Yeah. That sounds more like you, to be honest.
Yeah.
This reaction to this game. The previous one, that sounds bizarre. As in your reaction doesn't sound it's uncharacteristic for you.
What you mean, like with the Zoom Beanies of not
Yeah.
knowing? Yeah. Well, it was a problem that I had with, like I said, with the Secret Monkey Island, where it was just a case of I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It was just, it could not, like, I suppose it was like my logical mind couldn't grasp the fact that
Hmm.
a mountain would be allergic to shoes.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have occurred to me. But if I'm said like, right, here's a bunch of eggs, you need to make so they're all different. It's like, right, yeah, I can do that. Just divide them up evenly.
Yeah. Well, have you seen what kids' TV is like? Do you remember what kids' TV was like? I mean, having a mountain that's allergic to shoes and sneezing when they come close to and it blows you away, that is not unusual for kids' TV. So I think in that respect, it's not so bad.
Yeah. Well, I still, I feel like I'm sort of justified in my reaction to not.
You can take it to the grave.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, I suppose I went on a bit of a rant there. Do you have
No, no,
anything
no.
to? Well,
It's fine.
do you have any more like school stories?
Video games at school. Um, Not particularly. I think it's basically it was just flash games, whatever we could play at in secondary school. And then when I was doing my A levels,
Yeah.
we had a console in the common room, and so we essentially played FIFA football games. We had that's actually something. I brought my PlayStation 2. So this point I already had a PS3 for quite some time, and I still had my old PlayStation 2. And I remember after I got went to when after in year 12 we were allowed if the year 13s wanted to invite us into the common room we were allowed, but otherwise we weren't allowed. And so at times they invited us to play. And if ever there was a multiplayer game, we would get they had one controller which was a PlayStation sorry, one controller which was a PlayStation 3 controller. This was the year 13s before us, and there was one controller which was a PS2 controller, which was going through an adapter into the PlayStation 3, and the analog sticks were off keister. They were like, if you wanted to go up, you had to press right. If you wanted to go right, you had to press down, and it had these kinds of problems. Of course, the triggers weren't, pressure sensitive, and there were no R3 and L3 buttons. So basically, you were limited in your controls. But because we were year 12s, that's the controller we had to use. I mean, the year 13s among themselves, they uh, they uh, they kind of took turns or whatever. But we were always forced to use a bad controller, and it made losing to a year 12 while the year 12 are using a dodgy controller all the more humiliating. And I suspect that one of the year 13s didn't like me on this for this reason. But I won't go too much into that. Afterwards, yeah, I brought the PS2 in, and I didn't have many PS2 games. I don't think any in any case any many PS2 games I think they would enjoy. I remember I brought the PS2. I think the game that I brought with me would have been oh geez, hang on, what multiplayer games did I have? I can't remember. But in any case, I do remember someone brought Rugby '04, and that was a game and a half. That was a game I think where either it was the perspective or it was the firstly it was an incredible game, really loads of fun. And I always played as South Africa. Either it was the perspective or it was the gameplay that had been rushed slightly. If you ran diagonally, you ran faster than if you ran straight.
Yeah, yeah, I can see how that works. See,
And yeah,
yeah, this is I suppose this is sort of my like game creation sort of mind at work here, but I'm imagining running diagonally is sort of like it takes you in both the X and the Y axis as if you're going up and right,
yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah.
So if you're yeah, anyway, that was Rugby '04, and it was loads of fun. But somebody else brought in Worms 3D, and yeah, it was just loads of good fun when we had time. And then I think the housemaster is a very posh school. The housemaster got us an Xbox 360, and then I think we just simply played football. Oh no, we had Modern Warfare 2, I think, as well, Call of Duty. So we had two games on that afterwards.
When I think of Worms 3D, I mostly think of the theme song.
I can't remember it.
It's Shake Our Coconuts by Junior Senior.
That says nothing to me.
Well,
I'll listen to it afterwards.
yeah, yeah. I was thinking, you were saying about like that controller where uh, right was up and
Yeah,
down was right and all that.
I think right was
Could you,
down, up was right. So
yeah,
it was twisted 90 degrees.
twist it? Yeah, I was thinking, couldn't you like, would it have helped if you like twisted the controller around at all?
Well, we played FIFA, so it probably would have made sense to hold the controller at a 90-degree angle. But I think I just got used to it.
Yeah. You reminded me when you were talking about like the different controls and all that, but I know it's sort of like become a meme at this point, but the whole thing of oh like whoever's console it is, they get to play as like with the official controller,
With a good
and
controller.
yeah, the official one, and then
Yeah.
whoever's joining, they have to play with the third party controller. I remember having oh I remember we had some. I mean, PS1 days, we had loads of controllers over the years. I mean, they would have been a lot cheaper then than what they are now. But I remember there's quite a lot of them that I really liked. Like Mad Catz, like ones that are notorious for being bad. Like there was a Mad Catz controller with this like a blue cover on the front, and it had like the turbo and slow switches and all that,
Hmm.
and the handles had like padding, and I really and it was, I don't know, at the time I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to use this controller. But we also had a controller that was awful. It was like, it didn't have analog sticks. The buttons were all just like a solid color, and the controller itself was transparent. But the worst part of it was that the wire was really short.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. So that just,
Did you ever
so
have a
that,
multi-tap?
yes, yes, I did. The PS1, I had a PS1 multi-tap
Uh-huh.
because I think the only game I know that we played with the multi-tap would have been Poi Poi 1 and Poi Poi 2, because that's up to 4 players. But I don't act now that I think, Bloodlines maybe, but that's a very obscure game. I think that's a game that was only released in Europe. That's how obscure it is.
Hmm.
But yeah, outside of
Well,
those 2 games, well, those 3 games, I can't think of any others.
well, I remember when I was a kid, we used to go on holiday. Every single holiday we had, every single half term, every single, Easter, summer, winter holiday, Christmas holiday, we went to Poland simply because that's where my dad's family's from and went to visit family. Once my parents had their own house in Poland, there was like an old farmhouse. We went there instead, and or my brothers and my mum eventually started inviting their friends. So my two brothers had best friends who were at school. So my oldest brother had a best friend from his class, and then my other brother had a best friend who was the other best friend's brother. So basically, my two brothers and these two other brothers were all best friends, and so we invited them and their mum to Poland. I think they came over in the summer, and they also came over in the winter. So in the winter it was for skiing and snowboarding. In the summer it was just for fun. And I remember I got to invite somebody one time, and this was for a winter holiday, and he brought his multi-tap, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And so this was, I can't remember what year this would have been, but we had the PS2. And I remember my brother, my friend, and I played. I think he broke his arm. Oh yeah, my friend broke his arm while snowboarding, which was kind of predictable. To be fair, it's fairly dangerous. Um, and so we couldn't go snowboarding for a few days, or I didn't go with him anyway. But we ended up playing a really, really long game of James Bond Nightfire. So we started like a multiplayer game where it's just like a skirmish, like an arena where there is a target. There's this type of game mode, say capture the flag, and you can fill the game with bots, but you can also play with up to 4 people with a multi-tap, up to 4 players. So anyway, I remember playing. We played this. We set the game to play capture the flag on Fort Knox. Fans of Nightfire will know what that is. And we had some difficult AI set up, and there was the 3 of us. And the idea was we were good enough at the game that we knew that we could win without the AI actually, capturing the flag, capturing any flags. But we wanted to get we knew that we could win, but we wanted to win by, I think it was 128 was the maximum score. We wanted to win by 128 to nothing. And so we had this tactic all planned out that one person was protecting the flag. 2 people were protecting the flag. One person was running to capture the flag, or was it the other way around? And we'd rotate depending on what kind of ammo we needed if we were running out of bullets and things like that. And I remember we got to, I think, 123 to nothing. And by this point, we would have been playing for hours and the PS2 froze. So all of that. It was a really nice experience, though. In any case, that was a time when we played. That was kind of away from home because this was a completely different setup from what we were used to. This was in Poland. I actually also remember one more thing about
Yeah.
Poland. While I remember, one time, this is actually very interesting. I'm sure not many people did this. Uh, Before we went, so what? At times, instead of flying to Poland, we drove. So my parents drove the car all the way through Europe to Poland, and that's like a day and a half, as in 24 hour or more than 24 hour drive with
Yeah.
breaks and
Is
so
it
on.
from England?
Yeah, from England. So
Yeah,
we
that
we
is a lot.
lived we lived not so far from London. So in London, from London to Dover would be a few hours. In France would only be 20 minutes. I think it would be a good 5 or 6 hours in Belgium, then practically a whole day in Germany, and then we back then we drove through the Czech Republic because they had better roads than Poland did. Because we lived right on the Czech border, in the south of Poland. This is where I live now.
Yeah.
In any case, we drove this entire long journey, and of course, for kids, it's incredibly boring. So one time we decided, or I bought with money that I'd received, uh, money that I'd saved up. I bought a. Okay, how can I describe this? So it was basically a screen for PS2s to play in the car. So it kind of attached to the top of your PS2. Then it had a small, I think, like 7 inch or an 8 inch screen, color screen.
Yes. Yeah. You remember the story I was telling you about me playing Mario Kart at my friend's house? He was at the same time he was playing on his PS2 using like that screen that like
Yeah.
attaches to it. But I mean, you must have had like a battery or something as
Yeah, so
well.
this connected to a kind of, I remember the color. It was like a blue purplish transformer or something along those lines, and that connected to the car's power outlet. The simple 12-volt
Yeah.
power outlet, and then that connected to the. It had its own fuses, and it was fairly advanced for what it was for a kid's product or a kid's toy, as my parents understood it. And I think it cost around 100 to 120 pounds back then, which was a lot of money, to be fair. Looking back, I had a lot of money to spend on it. But in any case, I remember we bought that, but playing back then, the game that we were playing most was Gran Turismo 4. But playing Gran Turismo 4 in the car while driving just made us feel sick, and so we didn't play, I think, practically the whole journey. Although, actually, no, we played Final Fantasy 8. So there we go,
Yeah.
another reference. And what we did at some point was when we were too tired, our eyes were tired from looking at the small screen. We just because I think it had a headphone jack. I think we put headphones in, and we just, went to somewhere where we liked the music and left the game running, and we just listened to the music. But I remember what I'm getting at is I remember trying to show this thing to my cousins in Poland. So I had a cousin who was my age, who is my age still, in this small village, and so he grew up on a farm, fairly kind of, I won't say protected, but it was like a really nice environment. I don't think he had. Don't think they went to cities much. Don't think they went to. Um, I don't think they didn't have the latest technology. And so I remember
Yeah,
when I showed him this, my console, and I showed him this screen. We connected it up, we plugged it in, and tried to show him. I showed him Gran Turismo 4, and I thought, oh, this is amazing. What do you think? Do you want to have a go? And he just looked at me and said, "Nah, I think that uses too much power. I don't want to use it. I don't want to play on it." And for me, this perspective was mind-boggling. How could you not want to? This is amazing. This is a console plugged into a small screen, plugged into this weird purple-blue block, plugged into the power. What about this is not fun? What about this is not cool? But he just simply
yeah,
wasn't interested because that wasn't, you know,
yeah.
he couldn't
But
relate to it.
also, yeah, it's also a weird perspective. Like, I mean, I don't know how old he would have been at the time, but for like a child to think, oh no, this fun thing uses up too much power.
Yeah. Well, I remember that. I remember that very particular detail. He said that it must use
Yeah,
too much power. I recall actually showing him. So this would have been 2005 ish. So we would have been 12 at the time.
right.
And
Yeah,
I
because
remember
I
showing him a
imagine,
few years gone.
yeah, I imagine like living like in a farm like type area, you would be more, I suppose, what's the word? More like resource conscious.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Um, I recall showing him my Game Boy Color and Pokemon a few years previous, and I just remember. Sorry.
No, no, no. I was just I was just like laughing a bit weird because I was also thinking about you just reminded me of something, but I'll get to that once you've finished.
Well, I remember a few years previous showing him Pokemon Blue on my Game Boy, and I was trying to explain to him what levels were. So
All
we were
right.
in a fight. We're in Seafoam Islands, and I was trying to get Articuno or something. And I remember I had, I don't know, a gold duck, let's say, and it was level 41. And I tried to explain to him what level 41 meant,
Yeah.
and he couldn't fathom that these things progress. I said, it's basically like age, and the older you are, the better you are. And so this one's 41 years old, the maximum age is 100, and if you get to 100, you're really, really good. And that's something he
Yeah.
understood.
I was thinking just that another thing it just reminded me of. Uh, I was talking to a friend at work, and I had mentioned, I think it was your brother's friend who used a master ball on a graveler.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, and then he told me where he used his first master ball on an Abra.
On an Abra. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
I suppose they're
So,
difficult to because they're difficult to catch because
yeah.
they teleport away. So I understand that a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. As soon as he said that, I was thinking like, yeah, I can understand the thought process, but that goes behind that.
But the Graveler,
Yeah.
level 44 Graveler, amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, you yeah, but the first thing you reminded me of then was when we went to Ibiza for the second time. So this actually was 2001, I think. So 2001, this was the time when Matthew had lent me Final Fantasy VIII, and I couldn't leave Balam Garden, so I was stuck in the training area.
Hmm.
So I was doing that, and I had Pokemon. Oh, no, no, that was earlier. No, I had. Oh no, I'm mixing up my memories. That was the previous. Yeah, that was. Yeah, that was the previous year. So I had already gotten Final Fantasy 8 at this point. Anyway, so I had Pokemon Yellow, which I got for my 12th birthday, and I took it with me when we went to Ibiza for the second time, which at this point I was sort of there was like the kids center where like the kids would play and all that, and I remember it was like divided into like three different age groups, and I was sort of just on the upper end where like there wasn't really anyone older than me. Maybe there's a lot like younger than me, but maybe like a couple around my age. Um, and I took there's like this little play area there, and I took Pokemon Yellow with me. I think it was Yellow, but yeah, I took Pokemon Yellow with me, and I was like playing there. And one of the workers there, um, I showed him it, and and I was because like when you're a kid, you think, oh, I'm going to show this grown up this thing, and the response is usually like, yeah, that seems. It's like they're trying to they're entertaining you. They're sort of like going along,
Hmm.
going, all right, okay, oh, is that good? Oh, that's good, all right.
Yeah,
But
I
this,
just
yeah,
quickly, I taught
yeah,
kids for the last 2 years. I know exactly what that grown up was doing.
yeah,
Okay, keep going.
yeah. But this particular this particular worker there, I showed him Pokemon Yellow, and I was saying like, oh, you can't catch Pokemon from other trainers, and I
Hmm.
give it to him to play, and he was there for like 10 minutes just playing it, and he looked at me and goes, "This is a really good game." So I got like this random guy. I like introduced him to Pokemon, and he was like addicted to it,
Yeah,
and he kept
he
like,
probably went off and
yeah,
bought his own one,
yeah.
his own console.
Um, yeah. I mean, a couple of years before that, uh, I this would have been when I was 10. We went to Ibiza the first time. I took my Game Boy with me, and it's that just I should remember sitting on the balcony playing. I got Kirby's Dream Land for myself at this point, playing Kirby's Dream Land and Alleyway, and I think that was it. But anyway, I was going to sort of actually. So before we're going to talk, like mention arcades, but you had already mentioned about um the time crisis at the airport where you started shooting at the logo and all
Yes,
that.
yes.
Uh, but before I get into that, just another random story that sticks with me is, and this is sort of like a school thing, but not necessarily. I think it was like 2005. So I was, I don't know how old I would have been, um, maybe about like 16, 17. I think I was 16 at the time. And we had to do work experience like with the school. So we get sent to a place for a week, and we just have to like do the job, or like whatever we could feasibly. Um, and the one I got sent to was because I didn't actually find a place for myself, so they just sort of give me one. So I went to this place for like with the local council, and it was it's a very like strange, like interesting setup. It was like this, the door that led outside, you walked in, and it was just like this one room that had like like spiral staircase like around the outside, but it was also like this desk with a computer. I have this weird memory of just this guy coming in and just singing the Red Dwarf theme song as he was walking up the stairs.
Okay.
But but what would happen is I'd go there, and I remember the first the first day, one of the things I had to do was I had to make some tea for people, and it was like I'm looking back and I'm thinking like, was that work experience or did they just fancy a cuppa?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of just like sitting around and like, oh, this letter has a typo on it, so I have to like retype it all out and like spell this person's name correctly. So
Hmm.
I did all that. And it got to a point where sometimes there'd be nothing to do, but the computer had Pac-Man on. So I'd just play Pac-Man. Um, And I remember on the last day, the person who was like supervising me, she was off that day, so there was somebody else. And literally, like this, I walked in, and it was just like, yeah, you could just play Pac-Man today. So I spent all day playing Pac-Man. Like I played Pac-Man for a few hours,
That's
go and get my lunch, come back, play Pac-Man for a few more hours.
that's probably more Pac-Man than I've played in my life.
Probably more Pac-Man than I've played in the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I managed to. It wasn't like I think it was like a Flash rip-off sort of. So it had like one or two levels. Like it didn't like progressively get harder or faster or anything. It was just you just clear it out and it's like well done, start again.
hmm
Um. So yeah, I mean that's a very specific sort of memory. So I suppose it would be quite awkward to sort of say like, do you have any idea of memories like that? Because I can't imagine you could relate that to anything. But
No,
maybe
not particularly. No.
no, no. So um, I've been talking for a while, so I'm going to pass it on to you. But I do have a story. I do have some stories to tell about arcade. But apart from shooting the title screen in Time Crisis and the obviously the arcade club, which you talked about last time, do you have any particular like memories of arcades or things about arcades you want to talk about?
Uh, yeah, I think my experience was very limited. I didn't have I didn't have much, and aside from, the air hockey and Time
Yes,
Crisis, that's that. There's nothing else to tell really.
the air hockey with the bottle cap.
With a bottle cap, or for example, we used to get into the car racing ones. So there's like a whole, a seat and pedals and steering wheel. But
Yeah,
the experience of sitting in those in an arcade was pretty much the same as sitting in like the Postman Pat ride for kids at a shopping center. So it was
yeah,
pretty much the same, just sitting in a seat and pretending you're driving.
yeah,
Yeah, so no, very, very limited. It's sad, but also not so bad, perhaps. So
yeah,
it's sad that I didn't have that many experiences. Um, so I didn't have so many experiences in arcades when I was younger, but at the same time, I just don't feel as much nostalgia for them, and maybe that's a good thing because now that they are, well, I wouldn't say they're extinct, but they are very, very, very uncommon, and so
yeah,
I don't feel nostalgia for that.
yeah. Well, I only have two main like arcade stories. I mean, we didn't go to them loads. I mean, we went to them. I mean, there was one arcade at the Hollywood Bowl that we went to. Um, and I suppose I could sort of, again, like with the Zoombini thing, I suppose I could sort of like lean this into another sort of topic. But I remember at this arcade, I don't really remember much that was there. I think I played probably it's a racing game. I think it was probably Daytona USA. I just remember there being four like different colored lights for the different players. But the two games I remember mostly is Virtua Fighter 2 and Tekken 2. Um, I think this might have been around the same time as that friend that got the PS1 who had Tekken 2. So I don't know exactly which version of Tekken 2 I saw first, but I remember playing Tekken 2, and again it was like this 3D screen because again I was more used to like Mega Drive and all that, so I was used to 2D games. So seeing like this 3D game, uh, like 3D models, it was like a really like a big deal to me. And Virtua Fighter 2 is just I mean I don't know how familiar you are with Virtua Fighters at all, but it was just like another fighting game. Or like I mean not I mean in retrospect not as good as Tekken 2, but at the time it was just like oh it's another fighting game, and I really it was like such a huge novelty to play like these games like on a big screen and 3D and all that. It felt made it feel like big and special. But I've done this a few times, but I've found myself sometimes being delusional about just how much more advanced certain technology is compared to other ones. Because I mean, this was the first time I've done this, but it wasn't the last time. I think I've done it two more times since then, and I just don't understand why. But so I played Virtua Fighter 2 at this arcade, and then eventually we're going out shopping. Might have been Woolworths again, I don't know. But went out shopping and I saw Virtua Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive, and I got it. And in my mind, because I'd played the arcade version, which is ostensibly it's the Sega Saturn version, but I played the arcade version, and so I thought to myself when I got the Mega Drive version, this is going to look the same, which seems ridiculous because obviously it's not. Because Mega Drive, they play Sonic, and when they do 3D, it's like a 3D effect. It's I was used to, I knew what the Mega Drive was capable of, and
Hmm.
I knew what Mega Drive games looked like, but because I had played Virtua Fighter 2 in some capacity on this at this arcade, seeing it on the Mega Drive, my assumption wasn't, oh, it's going to be different to suit the Mega Drive, which it obviously was. My assumption was, oh wow, the Mega Drive's got this big 3D game.
Yeah, but what were you very disappointed when you played it and it was different?
Well, I don't know. I played it and it was just sort of like, yeah, that it makes sense. It would be like this
Yeah,
in a
so
way.
that's kind of what I predict. That's
Yeah,
kind of what I thought when you were unraveling that. That by the time you actually played it, you would have just accepted, oh, okay, it's different, and just played it anyway.
yeah. I mean, in retrospect, I'm noticing that's a phrase I'm saying more and more. But in retrospect, the PS not the PS2, the Mega Drive version of Virtua Fighter 2, and probably the arcade version as well, it's not very good, especially
Hmm.
especially the Mega Drive version. Like it's like remember at the arcade club when we played Mortal Kombat 2, I'd say it's
Yeah.
probably as good as, if not worse than that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've done that. I did that with when I saw that Tony Hawk's 2 was on the Game Boy Advance. I thought that would be like the PS1 version. Same with
Yeah.
the Robot War. I saw the PS2 version of the Robot Wars game, um, and I thought, oh wow, PS2, brand new graphics. Which
Yeah.
is it was always a thing when new consoles came out until the PS4. At that point, I stopped caring. But it was like, oh, PS2, like new graphics or whatever, and I got the Game Boy Advance version of Robot Wars, and it's pretty terrible.
Yeah. Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, Game Boy Advance version of because the PS2 version, it was, I mean, I suppose rather minimally, but it was like physics based. Like, are you familiar with Robot Wars, like the TV show?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Well, it was sort of like, I mean, it did have like the main robots in it, but I think you had to unlock them, and I never did. But you sort of like made your own robots, and you could put like a chainsaw or a flipper on and all that, and it was somewhat physics based. And you could sort of like get to like grips of like, yeah, this is sort of representative of how Robot Wars is. But the Game Boy Advance version, it was like literally um everything was very binary. Either you were completely flipped over or you
Hmm.
weren't.
Yeah.
And if you're able to self-write, you completely self-righted yourself, or you didn't.
Okay, but how would you design it better though? You've been given the task to release a game about robot wars on a console that isn't capable of doing 3D, let alone physics.
Yeah.
There's not much choice that you have.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think that is pretty much what you would have to do.
Yeah.
But it was just, but I suppose that's just the natural like outcome
I don't think
of,
Robot Wars on Game Boy Advance made it into your top 500 games. I don't recall.
oh, it might, I think it appeared on like, episode 1 or 2 or something.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It was below Rainbow Islands.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Actually, no, I think it wasn't episode 2 because the first episode was just the rules, and I think episode 2 was the first one with actual games in it, and I think it was like towards the end of that
Hmm.
episode. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, the other arcade game that I played was Soul Blade, but that was we went to Pontins like for a week. It's like a family trip to Pontins. Um, and I played like Soul Blade on the arcade machines, and I loved it. And then eventually, when I got home, I got it on the PS1 and got like a copied version of Soul Blade, and I still loved it. And also, I'd say Soul Blade, like in and of itself, is actually what I really liked about Soul Blade was that you could like play this extra mode where you could, obviously not on the arcade version, but you could play this extra mode where um, you could sort of like go on an adventure and go on go against these take these fights with like extra rules to them, like you have to knock them out the ring or you have to survive for 30 seconds or something like that. And you unlock more weapons with different stats and different like some of them would heal you and some of them would like do massive hits, but then they would like your defense would be reduced. And I really thought that was a game that where the arcade experience was positive, and then eventually when I got it, it was just more positivity.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so I suppose that's like an opposite story.
Yeah, that's nice.
Um, yeah, but I feel like I, f- I mean, the only other thing I can think of to get into was because I talked about the childcare centre before. I've mentioned that a few times, so that's
Yeah.
like an example. And I don't think there's much else that I have to say, um, other than I remember one time as a kid going to my cousin's house and he had a Super Nintendo, and I have this weird memory of him playing Super Mario World or some Super Mario game and being on level 4, as it was in my mind, and it being like a swamp level with no enemies. And I'm thinking that my memory must be wrong. It must not be a Mario game. It must be something else, or I'm interpreting like a level differently. I don't know. That's just a weird like memory in my
Hmm.
brain there. So I only really have the childcare centre to talk about, but I feel like I've talked a lot for a while. So I
Yeah,
think
I've got a good picture of what the childcare center was like. I've got one final thing I could share.
okay,
So the final thing is starts with a fairly horrific injury that I sustained while playing football at secondary school. So long story short, I got cut my knee open.
oh dear,
Yeah, and the story is fairly funny because when it happened, there was a girl who was on our team, and she saw my knee and she started screaming. And then I remember peering over my knee, and just thinking, "Oh dear, oh not again." As in, I hadn't had my
yeah,
knee cut open, but I was a really clumsy child. I always injured myself or hurt myself in some way, and it'd become routine at that point. I think I'd also felt a lot of adrenaline anyway, so I didn't. I just
yeah,
thought, oh,
yeah.
just
I
tisk tisk.
you have just reminded me of when I was in the last year of primary school, and when you have a memory and you think to yourself, that can't be right, or I'm like, am I remembering that right? Because it just seems so weird. There was someone in my year, in my class, we were sat on, and I don't recall, I've never seen anything else like this memory that I've got here. But we were sat like on the floor, and he had like it's like he had this big injury on his knee, and there was something sticking out of his
Ooh,
knee. Yeah, and
that's scary.
I remember, like in my mind, it's like a little bone, but I'm thinking, well, what bone could that be? I don't know. But he was there, and he was like was like flicking it around like it was funny.
Oh,
And
oh dear.
yeah, and at the time I was like, what is going on? But it's but it's
Okay.
like, yeah.
Sorry,
Mm.
but I think I may have inadvertently put you on a tangent. The point of the story wasn't that I cut my knee open. It was that
Oh,
I ended up in
right.
hospital for a few days.
Right, okay. Yeah.
And in the hospital there was a TV and a PS2. And this is possibly sorry.
It's okay. I'm just laughing about my tangent about this kid with his knee and me being confused. Right. Okay, the hospital with the TV.
Yeah, they had like a TV that had a PlayStation 2, and I just remember I think I was 15 at the time, and that made me that meant that I had to be in a children's ward. I wasn't allowed to be in an adult ward. I
Yeah.
had to be in a children's ward, and I was the oldest and the biggest kid there. And these were like some of these children were I don't know, they must have been like 5 or 6 years old, very, very, very young compared to me. And I actually remember that I was woken up by a nurse in the middle of the night that my snoring had made some of the kids cry. It's a funny memory that suddenly returned to me. Anyway, anyway. But what I remember is I had like a really eye-opening moment when the nurses saw that I was really bored. That I don't know what I could have possibly been doing. I probably had a mobile phone by that point, so maybe I was just playing Bounce or something on my mobile phone. But I remember they wheeled over a TV, a small CRT TV on a big trolley with a PlayStation 2. And I just remember looking through all the games that they had, and there were like 20 or 30 odd games there, and just thinking, I don't really want to play any of these. And the reason for that was, I think, they were nothing like the games that I was used to. They were completely kind of alien to me. And I was living in my very own narrow world as I am today. And I'm happy to admit that. And for me, playing on the PlayStation 2 meant I was either playing any of the games that I had, that I owned, or that my family owned, or games related to those games. So anything like a car racing game that had realistic looking cars, that got a thumbs up from me, basically. It didn't matter if it was, Gran Turismo or Project Gotham Racing or Toka or whatever. I could get my head around that. But I recall, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't matter anyway because this is a really old memory. Uh, but I think there was Spyro. They had Spyro, or was it PS1 Spyro or something? It was a game kind of like Spyro. I don't know. Was there one for PS2?
There are a couple of PS2 Spyro games.
So yeah, I think it may have been a Spyro. And now that I know I've never played a Spyro game, I think, but I know what it is now as an adult because I read more, I learn more. But I just remember back then thinking, why the hell would I want to play this game with a purple dinosaur? This is stupid. Why can't I play The Matrix or something? But it didn't, it was kind of I had blocked out an entire library of games, not because they were bad, but simply they weren't what I was used to. And what I was used to was the games that we had at home. And even though it was the same console that we had at home, the TV was a bit smaller, fair enough, and my knee was cut open, fair enough. I mean, I don't get ticks in the comfort zone, but the simply because they weren't the games that I was used to, or they weren't the games that I would go out of my way to buy or to try and get, I didn't want to play it. It was
Yeah.
very interesting. I think that's summarize again. It's another one of these things that summarizes me up quite well.
I think if I try to imagine myself in that sort of situation, I think my approach would be like if it was a bunch of games I wouldn't normally be interested in playing, I think my approach would just be like just to try to settle on something.
Yeah. Well, actually, I just refused. I think I looked at all the games. I think I put one game in. It was like a 3D action kind of game. I don't think there were guns. I think it might have been just, running and jumping kind of 3D platformer. Or was it, oh, it might have been a spy type of game. In any case, I remember putting that in, playing it for 5 minutes, and then deciding, no, I don't want to play anything, and I just left the console alone.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, there could have been for there could have been something amazing in there that you didn't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so yeah, so the last thing I was going to talk about, um, from my end was the childcare centre that I went to as a kid.
Hmm.
Um, and mostly this is strangely enough, this is where I first saw Final Fantasy 6 and 7, which is rather peculiar looking back at it. But I think the most notable game, actually, no, I remember there was a kid there who used to bring just like this bag full of demo discs, and it was like he didn't. It was I don't know like the truth to this, but it was as if he didn't properly like grasp the idea that full games existed.
Uh-huh.
So so he was just always like, playing demos just all the time. And I remember there was one kid there who had played Final Fantasy 7 and he but he didn't have a memory card. So he would always like he didn't understand like the scope of the game. He'd just like start the game off, finish the first reactor, then turn it off.
Hmm. And then do it
And so
all over again.
yeah, and he never figured out what materia was. And
So
then
he may as well have had a broken disc.
yeah, well yeah, well I remember he'd asked like, "Oh, how many reactors have you blown up?" So
Amazing.
so like that was his interpretation of what Final Fantasy 7 was.
And
Blow
imagine, so in the game, how many reactors do you blow up? You blow up two in Midgar, right? Just in the
I
story.
think yeah, I think it's two.
So then if you said, well, two, because that's how many you're supposed to blow up, then he would turn back and say, well, I've blown up 20. And in his mind, you're the idiot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my main memory um from this place that that I want to like point to is um this was where I mean I could talk if I wanted to I could talk about like loads of games, but I mean it's not interesting and I don't really have the time to. But the main one that sticks with me, the main story, is with the Tony Hawk games, Tony Hawk's 1 and 2, because when I started playing those, I was terrible at them. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was really interested. And then when I found out there was a level editor on Tony Hawk's 2, it was like, right, I want that game. And then when I got them for it was like a birthday or Christmas or whatever, I really got into them and I got really good. I practiced loads and I got really good. And then when I came back to that childcare center um, the following like holiday, whatever time of school it was, everyone was used to me being really bad.
Hmm.
And so, but I had like this newfound like acquisition of skills. So I went there and I used to, I just annihilated everybody. I
Hmm.
was like, suddenly I was suddenly I was like really good at the game, which eventually got to the point where um like my skills were sort of picked up by everyone else. And so I'm not like especially fantastic now compared to like what standard, but back then,
But you
I,
you also raised everyone's level.
well, eventually, I suppose so, yeah. But the two main stories that sort of stemmed from that was that there was one time when the the PS1 was moved from what was called the senior room, which was sort of like the room for the older kids. So really nice, like nice chairs, had like a pool table and like a
Hmm.
PS1 and all that. Really nice. The PS1 got moved to like the main room for the young, like which is like everyone. But I mean, I didn't really spend any time there because it was all like like random toys and all that. So it
Yeah.
wasn't as interesting to me. But it got moved there, so that's the place where I sometimes go there to play that. And there was a kid there, a younger kid, and he was so cocky. right? There was other people. I didn't know anyone else who was like this to the extent that he was, but like other people were playing, and he was like, I don't understand why you don't blunt slide. It's only down, down triangle. Just like, doing this like, oh, I'm superior. Oh, I know all the tricks. It's like, I can't believe you can't even do this thing and like this very specific thing. And I said like, oh, I'll give you I'll play against you. I'll give you a game, like a 10-minute time attack.
Mhm.
Anyway, we did. And I got like 5 times his score or 10 times his score or whatever. And he stopped after that. So that made me very proud. But I didn't like rub it in his face or anything. It was just like, oh yeah, it was I invited him to it, like, oh, do you fancy giving me a game? And him being like cocky, he was like, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
And then I won, and he just sort of like from what I saw, he sort of just like kept his mouth shut after that. So that
Yeah.
was that was that was very nice.
You
That
put
was
a
a
kid in
very
his place.
yeah, put him in his place. Another time was this child I said to got moved to this other, like that place shut down, um, and it got moved to another place, and there were some new kids there, and again we had Tony Hawk's. I think we were playing Tony Hawk's One, and they were taking like there was two or three of them, and they were taking turns to sort of try and get the high score on like the school level, which is like the second level in the game,
Hmm.
like trying to get the sixth score or whatever. And they were like taking turns, and they were passing the control around. And I was saying like, oh, I can do it. And they just did not believe me. They did
Yeah.
not believe me at all. Just like, oh no, you can't. So they just kept passing around like the controller, and they kept trying to do it, and they kept failing. It's like, oh, I got like halfway there or something,
Hmm.
right? Anyway, eventually they passed it on to me, not because they thought I could do it, but because they got bored and wanted to do something else,
Hmm.
right? So so I was like, right, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make a deal of it because I was annoyed that they didn't trust because I wasn't part of like their gang or whatever,
Oh yeah.
like part of that like social, like they like on the social tiering they put me below them basically. So they went and did their own thing, and they were like, oh fine, we'll give it to you now, you can have your playtime, like that sort of thing. And the thing that they were younger than me, I think they were younger than me as well, right? So it's that sort of dynamic. Anyway, I absolutely annihilate the sixth score, and I get all the tapes and everything, and I say, oh, I've done it. And they looked over, and they were like in utter shock.
Hmm.
And they were like, oh, I didn't think you could. Oh, you did it. And I'm there thinking like, yes, I told you I could do this.
You
Why
you
did you
became Gandalf in that moment.
like? Oh, I do not remember Lord of the Rings enough to know that, to understand
Well,
that.
as in
And
you became their leader. They're just
yeah,
yeah.
I suppose so. But it was just a case of like they they saw me as just like not up to snuff or whatever the saying is, and
Hmm.
then I just did it, and it was like I did it on my own terms. Like, right, they've gone. I was like, I'll just do it, and I did it, and I was like, look, I've done it, and suddenly, I was like part of the cool gang.
Yeah, that's it.
But it was so annoying that I wasn't taken for my word. I wonder if it feels, although I wasn't like that kid before where I was talking about how like amazing I am or anything. I wasn't doing that. I wonder if they sort of saw me the same way that I saw him, where it's sort of like, you're probably all right, but I don't know.
Oh well.
But yeah, that was that was the story I felt like, if I'm talking about getting away from home, that's the story I felt
Yeah,
like I have to
I don't
tell.
think
But
you told that before.
yeah, well, we've gone on for nearly 2 hours. I don't know
Hmm.
if there's anything that you want to add. I feel like I've talked a lot today, but I also feel like this has been a good one. I feel like I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I don't know. The main point that I was going to make, I made right at the beginning, which was that video games were attached with a stigma. But now that they're not a stigma for me, I
Yeah.
still wouldn't do it in public. simply because I don't. Well, do it in public sounds very strange. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do it out of the confines of my computer desk and the home environment, simply because it's
Yeah.
not as much fun if it's not
Yeah.
there.
I suppose when I was it just reminded me when I was like really young, I didn't quite grasp the idea that people didn't care about the things that I cared about.
Oh wow.
S- So, um, like there's a few years in school where I just talk about Sonic the Hedgehog all the time, and people not being interested, I interpreted them as not knowing about Sonic enough. So I had to tell them more about Sonic. And there was one time in like year two or something, we had it was like year two or three or something, and we had it was like a competition for like a fun run or something, and we had to like discuss like, oh, what should the prize be? And my
Sonic 2.
no, oh, very close, very close. My suggestion was Sonic 3. And they said something like, "Ooh, something maybe a bit more affordable," but really, what they were thinking of, which was like something that anyone other than me would care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, in my work for the last 2 years, this has been very relatable. The amount of times
So
I've had kids tell me about why something in Fortnite or Brawl Stars or something is amazing.
yeah,
It's just it really annoyed me.
yeah,
Bringing back memories now.
yeah. But I suppose the difference there is that it's like you do like games in general. I mean, you might say like, oh, it's to a very limited capacity, but I don't know. Do they know that you like games at all?
I told one group whom I taught.
Right,
These would have
right,
been 7-year-olds because I think they
right.
asked me. I think we were practicing. Do you like video games? And one of them asked me yes. One of them asked me, and I said yes.
Yeah,
And then they actually kept me to it, and they wanted to find out what games that I liked. So I showed them Gran Turismo 1 for the PS1. Sorry, Gran
oh,
Turismo 2 for the PS1.
yeah.
Because
I can
I
imagine.
wanted to show them something that would just boggle their minds at how anyone, like, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, this is what we played. But they were actually really receptive. They thought, "Oh, it's amazing. I love to try that."
Oh, okay.
Even though the graphics were, far inferior to basically anything you can download off the Google Play Store.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
I
know.
would have. I don't know. Yeah, I would have. I mean, maybe like a point of interest, like, oh, this is what games used to be like,
Yeah,
sort of
maybe
thing.
like that, as opposed to they want this
Yeah,
game instead.
yeah. But I imagine if you say like, oh, yes, I'm into games, they'd be like, oh, Fortnite, oh, Roblox, oh,
Oh,
Minecraft.
yeah. Minecraft isn't so bad. My sister
Yeah,
is, no, I don't want to get this wrong. She was born in 2012. She's 9 right now.
yeah,
My sister is 9 years old and she likes video games, which is great. But she really
yeah,
likes video games that her generation likes, and those are the kinds
yeah,
of video games that I hate. And for example, when I went to visit her last year, yeah, I think it was last year. When Ella and I went to visit her, she tried to show me Roblox, and she got me to install Roblox on my phone, and then she invited me to a server, and it was like a fairly decent premise for the mini game that we played on Roblox. It was you have to climb something, climb like some kind of room, and there were like ledges and things. But the controls were dreadful. The blocky characters annoyed me, and all the while in the back of my head, I had this idea that possibly some child designed this entire game, earned pennies from it, while Roblox are earning thousands, in the grand scheme of things,
yeah,
or millions in the grand scheme of things, from kids designing things for free, basically. And
yeah,
it's horrible. It's
yeah,
horrible to think about. So with my sister, um, I bought her I gave her my Minecraft account, and then I bought my own one. So we play
yeah,
Minecraft, Java edition, Again, Java's important because the Windows 10 edition has loads of microtransactions where you can buy skins and you can buy capes and all sorts of other stupid stuff. Whereas on the Java edition, it's all free basically. The only thing I think you can buy in game is servers, and obviously you can spend money in servers, but that's a lot more difficult, and the user interface isn't as child friendly to help with the spending. So anyway, we play Java edition, and I've got a server rented, and we go on a server together. But yeah,
Yeah.
the games that she likes are just dreadful, apart from Minecraft.
I remember you saying, because I remember we talked about this a while ago. You were talking about Minecraft, and that's when I showed you the giant repent sign that I'd
Yes,
made.
yes, amazing. Did you use it as a thumbnail?
No, as a thumbnail. I put the image in the episode,
Oh right, okay.
just cropped up on screen, like
Yeah,
as I
yeah.
was talking about it.
Repent.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, it's midnight now over here. I think I should finish.
yeah. It's
Thank you very
it's been a
much.
good one.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I've learnt a lot and I've had a lot of fun.
Yes, I've enjoyed it. You see, usually, like with episode 3, that was the last one where I felt like I really dominated the conversation, and I didn't wasn't really keen on it. But this time, I feel like I've sort of dominated the conversation, but I've liked it.
Okay.
So quite a different.
I think it's natural though because there are some things that I just don't have a lot of experience in, and so there's not much I
Yeah,
can do but listen
yeah, and react.
and react.
Right.
Right. Well, good night. Have a good evening. Well,
Okay.
have a good night, and I'll
I shall.
speak to you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.